Hello, friends. Welcome to Book Insider. Today, we're going to talk about the book Disrupt You by Jay Samit. Harjes had always been confused about his life. He had a small startup that was running just fine, but he felt stuck. Every day, he followed the same routine, going to work, meeting deadlines, coming back home, and feeling frustrated. One day, he walked into a small bookstore near his office and saw a book titled Disrupt You by Jay Samit. The title instantly caught his attention. He thought, maybe this is exactly what I need. Without thinking much, he bought the book and started reading it as soon as he got home. The first chapter was titled Embrace Change as an Opportunity. As Harjes started reading, he felt like the chapter was telling his own story. Jay Samit had written that every disruption is an opportunity, a chance to see things differently. But Harjes thought, that's easy to say, but hard to do. Still, his curiosity pushed him to keep reading. One particular line from the chapter impacted him deeply. Change is an invitation. He asked himself, why do I see every big or small problem as just a hurdle? Is it possible to look at them as opportunities instead? The very next day at work, he got his first chance to apply this new mindset. A major client was considering canceling a deal at the last minute. At first, Harjes panicked. But then he remembered what he had read in the book. He told himself, maybe this is an opportunity to explore something new. He calmly spoke with the client, understood their concerns, and suggested a slight modification to the deal. To his surprise, the client agreed. Harjes realized that if he had panicked, he might have lost the deal completely. But by embracing change, he was able to save it. That evening, he asked himself a question. If I treat every challenge this way, how much can my life change? One day, while sitting on his terrace, he started thinking about his past failures. He recalled how, a few years ago, he had launched a new product line, but it failed miserably. At that time, he thought it was the biggest mistake of his life. But after reading the chapter, he realized that it was actually a valuable lesson. He had learned that creating a product without understanding customer needs is foolish. He promised himself that from now on, he would see every failure as a lesson. Gradually, his mindset started shifting. One day, when someone in his team proposed a risky idea, instead of rejecting it outright, he thought, why not? Growth comes from taking risks. He decided to experiment with the idea. Even though it didn't work perfectly, the team learned a lot from the process. Harjes started to understand the real meaning of disruption. It's about developing a mindset that sees growth in every failure and challenge. Meanwhile, his personal life was also changing. Earlier, he used to get upset over small things, like canceled plans or getting stuck in traffic. These things would ruin his mood. But now, he started seeing them differently. One day, when a friend canceled their meeting at the last minute, he would have normally felt irritated. But instead, he thought, let's use this free time to learn something new. He opened his laptop and joined an online coding class that he had been postponing for a long time. Slowly, Harjes realized that his mindset was shifting. He was no longer afraid of failure. Instead, he started thinking, if something goes wrong, what can I learn from it? That first chapter had changed his entire perspective on life. He told himself, if just one chapter can have such an impact, what will happen after I read the whole book? Now, every day felt like a new adventure. He was no longer stuck in a boring routine. Each day, he felt excited to try something new and learn something different. He also encouraged his team to bring in fresh ideas. Slowly, a new energy started spreading in his company. One day, he wrote in his diary, disruption doesn't just happen outside, it starts from within. True change comes when you change your thinking. While reading the book, Harjes asked himself another question. If I can learn to embrace change, how quickly can I achieve my goals? He realized it was time to take big steps in both his personal and professional life. His journey had just begun. He didn't know where it would lead him, but he was sure of one thing. Whatever happened next would teach him something new. Harjes's new routine now included reading books and applying their lessons to his life. Every day, he felt excited to learn and explore. After reading and practically applying just one chapter, he had learned an important truth. Real change happens in the mind first. Now he moved on to the next chapter. Conduct your own self-assessment. If you enjoy our free summaries, you can subscribe to our channel, purchase a membership, or support us via UPI. Back to the summary. Jay Samit once wrote that true growth begins with self-awareness, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, and the skills that genuinely excite you. When Harjes read this concept, he thought, this makes so much sense. I've spent my life trying to meet others' expectations, but I've never taken the time to figure out who I really am or what I truly want. That night, he pulled out an old diary he used to write in occasionally. Opening a blank page, he wrote his first question. What are my strengths? At first, the question felt intimidating. I'm just an average person, no special talents, no major achievements. But then he remembered what Jay Samit had said. Everyone has unique strengths. That meant he must have them too. So he started reflecting. After some time, he realized that he was great at communicating with people. Whether with team members or clients, he always listened attentively and made them feel comfortable. He wrote this down as his first strength: strong communication and empathy. Next, he moved on to weaknesses, which felt a little uncomfortable, but he decided to be honest with himself. He wrote, procrastination. I tend to delay things and then put unnecessary pressure on myself at the last minute. Fear of taking big risks. I often choose the safest options. Looking at his strengths and weaknesses side by side, he realized they were like a map, showing where he needed to improve and how he could leverage his strengths. The next day at work, he conducted a small experiment to tackle his procrastination. Instead of starting with easy tasks, he put the hardest one first on his to-do list. It felt strange at first, but he pushed himself. Surprisingly, once he completed that tough task, he felt so satisfied that the rest of the work seemed effortless. Maybe I can apply this every day, he thought. That evening, sitting on his balcony, he began reflecting on his passions. He asked himself, what truly excites me? At first, he thought answering would be easy, but as he dug deeper, he realized that for years, he had been trapped in work and making money, completely disconnected from himself. Then a memory resurfaced, his love for writing. Back in college, he used to write short stories. Over time, life's hustle made that passion fade. He wrote in his diary, I love storytelling. It helps me express myself and connect with people. The next day, he dug up his old drafts and read through them. They weren't perfect, but he saw a spark in them. Can I revive this passion? Maybe this is a part of my identity that I lost. Determined to explore himself further, he created a self-assessment chart with 3 sections. Skills I'm good at. Skills I need to improve. Things I love doing. Through this process, he discovered new things about himself. He realized he was good at marketing strategy, but weak in financial management. He also felt he needed to improve his tech skills to use digital tools more effectively. Instead of seeing his weaknesses as flaws, he turned them into action points. He enrolled in an online course on financial management for startup founders and committed to studying it every weekend. This made him feel that he could slowly turn his weaknesses into strengths. The biggest impact of this self-assessment was on his personal life. He started evaluating his relationships and realized that he often prioritized others' needs over his own, leading to situations where he compromised his own priorities. So, he decided to set boundaries. One day, his friend Radhika invited him to a party. Normally, he would have automatically said yes, even if he didn't feel like going. But this time, he politely declined and spent the evening reading his favorite book and taking notes. He realized how impactful this small change could be for his mental health. Harj's thinking was becoming clearer. He started understanding that if he wanted to make a significant change in his life, he had to maximize his strengths and improve his weaknesses step by step. One day at the office, he gave his team an exercise. He asked everyone to write down their 3 biggest strengths and weaknesses. Then, they discussed how they could use their strengths to improve the team's productivity. This exercise turned out to be an eye-opener for everyone. They realized that their combined strengths could cover up their weaknesses. That night, Harjas wrote a note to himself. Until we truly understand ourselves, we cannot have the right expectations from others or from life. Self-assessment is not just about knowing oneself. It also enhances our ability to handle our surroundings better. Harjas now understood that self-assessment is an ongoing process. He made a promise to himself to review his progress once a month. He came up with a new question. How am I improving, and what can I do better? His life was gradually moving in a new direction. He thought it was time to read the next lesson in the book. If self-assessment could be so powerful, what other possibilities awaited in the next chapters? Harj's journey was still ongoing. He was certain that this process of introspection and growth would lead him to a place where he could unlock his full potential. Harjas reached the next chapter, Learning from Failure. As he read the chapter title, a long list of his past failures flashed in his mind. Failures that still made him feel guilt and embarrassment. But at the very beginning of the chapter, Jay Samit had written, "Failure is not the end, it is merely a stepping stone toward success." This made Harjes reflect. Had he been looking at his failures the wrong way? With curiosity, he continued reading. Jay Samit explained that every failure contains a lesson, and successful people are those who can extract those lessons. Harjes closed the book and took out his journal. He asked himself, "Can I start seeing my failures as stepping stones?" Then he began writing about his biggest failure. The first failure was quitting his first job. He remembered the day he entered the corporate world. He thought he could impress his manager and earn promotions quickly. But within a few months, he realized that his creativity was being suffocated in that environment. Impulsively, he resigned without a backup plan. He remained jobless for months and regretted his decision. But now, looking back at this failure, he asked himself, "What did this situation teach me?" He realized that this failure had given him a chance to understand himself better. He learned that he couldn't fit into rigid routines and structured systems. That realization was the starting point of his entrepreneurial journey. In his journal, he wrote, "That failure wasn't a mistake, it was a redirection." He then started thinking about his other failures. Once, he had worked tirelessly on a major deal for his startup, but the client rejected it. At the time, he felt that all his hard work had gone to waste. But in hindsight, he realized that the rejection was a wake-up call. He analyzed the reasons behind it and found that he had neglected market research. That lesson later helped him secure many successful deals. Harjes decided to develop a new habit. After every failure, he would ask himself 3 questions. What went wrong? What could I have done differently? What did I learn from this experience? One day at the office, he got a chance to test this new mindset. His team had launched a new product, but it started receiving negative feedback from the market. At first, Harjes felt frustrated, but then he gathered his team and said, "Don't worry, this is not a failure, it's feedback. Let's understand where we went wrong." They analyzed every comment from the market and realized that the product wasn't addressing the actual needs of the users. Based on this feedback, they made major changes and relaunched the product. This time, the response was much better. Harjes realized that if he had ignored this failure instead of accepting it, he might never have understood his mistake. He started applying this process to his personal life as well. Once, his childhood friend got upset with him because Harjes had forgotten to wish him on his birthday. At first, Harjes ignored it, thinking it was a small issue. But then he asked himself, "What can I learn from this situation?" He realized that he often took his relationships for granted. So he called his friend and apologized. This small step strengthened their friendship. One night, as he sat on his balcony, he started seeing his failures from a new perspective. He told himself, "Failures are like teachers. If I start learning from them, I might achieve something big in life." He wrote in his diary, "Failure is a tool, not a verdict. It teaches you to adapt, improve, and grow stronger." Harjes began taking conscious risks. The fear of rejection that once held him back started fading. One day, he decided to pitch to a big client, despite his team's doubts. He thought, "What's the worst that can happen? They'll say no. And if they do, I'll know where to improve." During the pitch, the client asked many questions, making Harjes feel the deal might not go through. But this time, he remained calm, carefully listening to the client's concerns and addressing them. Although the deal wasn't finalized immediately, the client said, "We're impressed with your approach. Let's revisit this in the future." Harjes saw this as a win because he no longer viewed rejection as personal failure. Gradually, his team also adopted his mindset. Now, instead of panicking when something went wrong, they discussed what went wrong and how to fix it. Harjes created a culture where failure was not seen as a stigma. He now deeply understood Jay Samit's words. Successful people don't fear failure. They accept it as a necessary step. He wrote another note in his diary. Rejection doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means you need to try a different approach. He also realized that failures were making him emotionally stronger. Every time he overcame a setback, he felt more confident. He told himself, "If I treat every failure as a learning experience, I might never actually lose." Harjes had now reached a point where he no longer feared failure. Instead, he was eager to take on new challenges and risks, knowing that each one would teach him something new. He knew his journey was still long, but he was ready for it. With this mindset, he turned the page to the next chapter of the book, Build a Support Network. As he read the first paragraph, he realized that this chapter was different. The previous lessons focused on self-improvement, understanding oneself, and learning from failures. But this chapter explored a new dimension. Jay Samit had written that making the journey alone is not just difficult, but sometimes impossible. He explained that your growth is directly influenced by the people you surround yourself with. Reading this, Harjes started thinking about the people in his life. He realized that some always motivated him, while others laughed at his ideas or discouraged him. He asked himself, do I need to reinvent my support system to improve my journey? He created 2 columns in his diary, one titled Positive Influences and the other Negative Influences. In the positive column, he listed some colleagues, his mentor, and his childhood friend Radhika. In the negative column, he wrote down the names of people who often distracted him from his goals or dismissed his ideas as impractical. He thought, I should focus my energy on those who help me grow. This realization pushed him to create an action plan. His first step was reaching out to his mentor, Ajay, who had guided him in his first job and continued to play a major role in his growth. Harjes planned to meet him and have a conversation about his self-improvement journey and the lessons he had learned from failure. Ajay said, your biggest strength is that you are always open to learning, but you need to surround yourself with people who can amplify your learning. Ajay gave him some practical tips. Network with like-minded people. Start attending conferences, meetups, and workshops. You will meet ambitious people like yourself there. Find collaborators. Executing every idea alone is not always possible. Teamwork accelerates innovation. Seek diverse perspectives. Connect with people from different backgrounds. Their perspectives will expand your thinking. Harjes listened carefully and decided to apply these lessons in his life. He started actively networking on LinkedIn, sending messages to influential people in his industry and initiating conversations. Initially, he was afraid that people might ignore him, but to his surprise, many responded and shared their experiences. He learned a lot from those conversations. One day, he spoke to Radhika, who had always supported his writing and creative ideas. Harjes told her that he wanted to restart his old writing hobby. She immediately said, you just need to start. I'll always be available to read your drafts and give feedback. Her words made Harjes realize that a support network isn't just about professional connections. Encouragement from friends and family is just as important. He talked to his parents about his journey, and their positive words boosted his confidence even more. To expand his support network further, he took another step. He joined a mastermind group of entrepreneurs who met monthly to discuss challenges and solutions. The first time he attended, he felt nervous, but the group welcomed him and gave him a chance to share his story. He talked about his failures and lessons learned. One of the members, Sakshi, said, your journey is inspiring, but I think you can do even better with collaboration. Have you thought about working with someone on your next idea? This made Harjes realize that he had always handled projects alone. Maybe it was time for teamwork. He started participating in brainstorming sessions with Sakshi and other group members, learning something new each time. Harjes also realized that a support network isn't just about professional help. When he was upset about a project rejection, another mastermind group member, Arav, told him, don't take failures personally. If you're facing rejection, it means you're trying something new. Arav's words deeply resonated with him. He understood that a strong support network doesn't just provide guidance, but also emotional strength. Harjes's routine changed. He spent time with his support network every week, brainstorming ideas, discussing over coffee, and simply listening to their journeys. He wrote in his diary, a strong support network is like a safety net. It catches you when you fall and pushes you to reach greater heights. One day, he shared this concept with his team. He said, our team dynamic is also a support network. If we recognize each other's strengths and give honest feedback, we can grow both individually and collectively. He organized an activity where every team member highlighted each other's strengths and contributions. This activity helped boost team morale significantly. Harjes now understood that the idea of achieving success alone was a myth. He had embraced Jay Samit's philosophy. Your success is a reflection of the people you choose to surround yourself with. His journey was still ongoing. He decided to open the next chapter of the book because he knew that every new lesson would continue transforming his life. The next chapter was Innovate Incrementally. This lesson felt different to him because he had always focused on chasing big goals. He believed that significant success required massive changes. But as he started reading, Jay Samit wrote, Small, consistent changes over time can lead to extraordinary results. This idea felt unusual to Harges. He had always thought that if something was worth doing, it had to be done on a large scale. As he read the chapter, he began to understand that even small steps could be part of the bigger picture. He thought about how to apply this concept to his own life. He focused on his personal and professional goals and decided to break them down into smaller parts. He took out his diary and created a new strategy. Define the big picture. What do I want to achieve? Break it down into smaller, manageable steps. Track progress. Reward yourself after achieving each step. Harges started with his personal goal, improving his fitness. He had taken gym memberships multiple times before, but due to a lack of consistency, he never made real progress. This time, he decided to take a different approach by breaking down his big goal into smaller steps. Week 1. Walk for just 15 minutes every day. Week 2. Increase the walk duration to 30 minutes. Week 3. Extend the walk to 45 minutes. Week 4. Walk for 1 hour and start home workouts. In the first week, he felt that this approach was quite easy. There was no pressure, and he could comfortably complete his 15-minute walk. In the second week, he gradually increased the duration, which boosted his confidence. By the third week, he had already developed the discipline to exercise daily. Harges realized that this incremental approach could work not just for fitness, but also for his professional goals. He revisited an old startup project that had always felt overwhelming. This time, he divided it into small tasks. Day 1, conduct market research. Days 2 to 4, decide on the app's basic features. Week 2, develop a prototype. He focused solely on market research on the first day. Once it was completed, he felt satisfied. Within a few weeks, he had a working prototype of the app. He was surprised at how much progress he made just by taking small steps. During this time, he also shared the concept of incremental innovation with his team. In a team meeting, he said, "We don't need to make big changes all at once. If we improve little by little every day, by the end of the year, the difference will be huge." To boost team productivity, they implemented a new system. Each member prioritized their tasks daily. Every week, the team reviewed their achievements. Every month, progress was compared with bigger goals. This system turned out to be highly effective, improving both team morale and performance. Harges also applied this approach to his creative hobbies. He loved writing, but always felt that writing a novel was too big of a goal. This time, he decided to develop a daily writing habit. He promised himself that he would write just 2 words per day. On the first day, it took him only 15 minutes. He realized that without pressure, his creativity flowed naturally. By the end of the week, he had written 1,400 words. In a month, he completed an entire short story, a huge milestone for him. Now, he fully understood the lesson from Jay Samit. He wrote in his diary, "Success is not about taking big leaps. It's the steady small steps that move you forward." He even applied incremental innovation to his relationships. Earlier, he thought strengthening bonds with friends and family required grand gestures. But this time, he took small steps. Calling one friend every weekend. Having dinner with his parents every week. Sending random motivational texts to his friends. These small actions had a big impact. His friends noticed that they felt more connected to him. His parents even told him, "Your little gestures bring us so much happiness." One day, while sitting on his balcony, he told himself, "In life, you don't have to achieve everything at once. Small, consistent changes are what truly sustain progress." He made this lesson from Jay Samit his core philosophy. Now, whenever he faced a big challenge, he broke it down into small steps. He realized that this approach not only helped him achieve goals, but also reduced fear and overwhelm. Harges' journey had now reached a point where, with incremental improvements every day, his life was transforming in a big way. He decided to open the next chapter of the book because he was sure that every new lesson would take him further. Harges' life had completely transformed. The art of taking small steps had not only helped him move toward his big dreams, but also taught him to enjoy the small victories of everyday life. He had stopped focusing solely on the big picture. He now understood that every major change was possible only through small, consistent efforts. One day, as he sat on his balcony watching the sunset, he held his diary in his hands, reflecting on all the lessons he had learned from Jay Samit's book, Disrupt Yourself. He said to himself, "I didn't just read the book, I lived it." On the last page of his diary, he wrote, Disruption is not about changing the world in a single day. It's about changing yourself, one step at a time. And when you do that consistently, the world changes on its own. Harjes had not only improved his fitness, but had also successfully launched the startup project he once considered impossible. The app became a hit among users, and he slowly started gaining recognition in his field. One day, Radhika told him, "It's inspiring to see your discipline and dedication. Your story could be a source of motivation for others." Harjes smiled and replied, "It's all because of the people around me and the power of small steps. I've learned that the most important thing in any journey is consistency." He organized a small celebration with his team, where he shared his journey. He said, "I've realized that innovation doesn't always mean making huge changes. If we focus on improving by just 1% every day, by the end of the year, we'll be 365% better. That's the power of incremental innovation." His words inspired his team and friends. Slowly, his story and philosophy started reaching more people. Now, Harjes was thinking about writing a new book, one that would turn his lessons and journey into a story that could help others discover their own potential. He was now convinced that true transformation happens through small steps, creating a better life along the way. Harjes' story doesn't end here. He knew that his journey was still ongoing. New challenges would come, new lessons would be learned. But he had developed the resilience to turn every obstacle into an opportunity. In that beautiful sunset moment, Harjes picked up the book to read its final lesson. His eyes now had a new spark, and his heart was filled with confidence that the next step would be just as meaningful as the last. So, friends, that was today's book summary. How did you like it? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for listening till the end.